Now, from food to tax, because wages are up, but they're still not keeping up with inflation. The rate of unemployment, too, rising to 3.9% in the first 3 months of the year, the first quarter up from 3.8%, according to the latest data from the Office for National Statistics. But in terms of the labour market, well, it could soon be turned on its head. A leading think tank, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, predicting that 1 in 5 of our workers will be paying the higher rate of income tax, that's 40%, by 2027, just a few years' time. And that includes nurses, fitters, electricians. Well, joining us now to run through those figures, our business editor, Liam Halligan, with On the Money. And Liam, we've talked about this before, what's called fiscal drag, but it's going to prove a bit more of a drag for all these middle earners, not the sort of the rich that the 40% tax rate used to hit. I mean, the Institute of Fiscal Studies has done a bit of number crunching, saying that really, if we go back like a generation, it should be those earning 100,000 and above
who should be paying 40%.
And it's what, 50 grand?
You're just over 50 grand. A slew of numbers out today, Mark, so bear with me. The ones I wanted to touch on first are really the headline wage numbers. These are, as you say, for January to March this year compared to January to March last year. I've put the numbers up here in a graphic for you. So private sector pay is up 7% those first 3 months of the year compared to the first 3 months of last year. Public sector pay, about a fifth of us work in the public sector. For the state, that's up 5.6%. But inflation in March was 10.1%, as you know. So both in the public and the private sector, wages are still well below inflation. That's why what we call real wages, allowing for price rises, what you can actually buy, they are still falling. And then my second graphic shows that in February and March, we lost an awful lot of working days to strike. So in February, we lost 330,000 odd days. In March, over 500,000, 556,000 days. These are the numbers of working days, people who didn't go to work because of strikes. It was actually up above 800,000 in January, so there really has been a lot of industrial action. Yeah. Unemployment, as you say, nudging up towards 4%. But this is the statistic that really grabbed me. The number of people who are long-term sick now increased by 250,000 over the last couple of months. Now over 2.5 million. That's almost 8% of the workforce are long-term sick. That's partly mental health issues. It's partly shoulders and neck issues the ONS have said maybe linked to working from home, I don't know. It's also linked to COVID. Yeah, what some medics call long COVID. It's a big condition and a lot of people are still off work because of it. Yeah, so after effects of a viral infection that's staying with people and they can't kick it. Just to touch on that inflation, and the other aspect then is when we talk about this tax situation, as inflation goes up, this tax bite is getting worse because obviously the thresholds, because they're staying, even though inflation is climbing up, basically more and more of your salary is going to go in tax, effectively. So we've just seen there wage rises, 7.6%, 5.6% public and private sector. But of course, the thresholds where you start paying income tax, that's the first 12.5 grand, roughly, and where you start paying tax not at 20%, which is the basic rate, but at 40%, double it, which is the higher rate. Of course, there's an additional 45% on top of that. That's for another day. But as inflation goes up and wages go up, you end up with more and more of your wages being taxed at a higher percentage. Yep. And the Institute of Fiscal Studies, very authoritative, they've crunched the numbers because Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, and then Jeremy Hunt, when he was Chancellor, rather than those thresholds going up every year with inflation, they've been frozen now until 2027, 2028. 6 years. And so the IFS has calculated, and the government can't deny these numbers, the IFS has calculated that by 2027, 1 in 5 workers will be paying a 40% rate of tax. Not wealthy people. We're talking about, 1 in 8 nurses. We're talking about 1 in 3 policemen and women. I mean, that's crazy. 1 in 5 electricians, 1 in 4 teachers, 1 in 6 machinists or fitters. Effectively, they say overall, it's a fifth of Britain's taxpayers. So you're not wealthy if you're one in 5 taxpayers, but you will be paying tax at 40%. This is, as you say, Mark, is what's called fiscal drag. And of course, a lot of Conservative backbenchers, they're absolutely up in arms about this because it's not as if say people aren't in the top tax bracket, then they stay in the top tax bracket. That's the politicians' view of the world. In the real world, when people need money, they work and they push themselves and they get in the top tax bracket because their earnings push them there. But why would you do it? It's a tax on aspiration and a tax on striving.
The other thing is it a tax on growth? Because, of course, we keep hearing this mantra about trying to get growth going in the economy. Jeremy Hunt saying basically that, you know, that will feed through eventually. However, is it this tax drag that's actually preventing that growth taking place because people physically haven't got the money to go and spend in the economy?
In my view, of course it is. Because why would you do any more? You're a skilled worker. Your boss, your company wants you to work more because they're going for growth. They've got some orders on. They've got some export orders or whatever it is. Why would you do the overtime? If you're going to pay, half of it goes to the tax man because the 40% rate of tax, and then
national insurance,
national insurance, 10, 11% on top of that. Why would you do that? Why would you push yourself if you're only going to get literally less than half the money back to spend on you and your family? That's why so many backbenchers are up in arms. And by the way, you know, even Labour now are starting to talk about the implications of this fiscal drag, saying, oh, we would uprate the thresholds. They're not saying that explicitly, but they're murmuring in the background.
Quick thought on what we were talking to Doogie about with this summit, as they call it, at Downing Street.
The farm to fork.
The farm to fork, a bit difficult to say. But it's interesting, we've got Jeremy Clarkson's farmer there. Even Clarkson himself saying, look, I'm going to find it difficult to make money on this. So it's not the farmers, it seems, that are profiting from these high food prices. It is disappearing something. And we know that Ed Davis, the Liberal Democrat, said Competition Markets Authority needs to look at this.
Yeah, he did in the end. You and I have been talking about this for months and months and months. The fact that food price inflation has been going up, even though wholesale food prices have actually
that's Caleb there, by the way, the picture there, just in case you're wondering. That's Jeremy Clarkson's farmer who does all the hard work for him.
and the government, you know, they should have done this weeks ago. They should have had the food retailers, the big supermarket bosses marched into Downing Street. And, you know, it's all very nicey, but they should be saying to, you know, in no uncertain terms, why is food price inflation so high? Why is it at 19% when general inflation is now at 10%? And wholesale food prices, as I've said many, many times, are coming down. Look, there are reasons why food's expensive. Fertiliser's expensive. It's linked to gas prices.
Diesel's been expensive.
Diesel's been expensive. To process food, you need labour. That's been expensive. You need electricity. All those things are expensive. But 19% food price inflation when general inflation is 10%? Really? It seems to me a little bit too high, and it's been clear for a long time, as Jeremy Clarkson says, as many farmers have told me and you here on GB News, that it's not the farmers that are making the big money, it's still the supermarkets. They're protecting their margins, the supermarkets, because that's what market power allows you to do.